please hit that subscribe button. Hey everybody, better suited to win the Stanley Cup this season. If you are new to the channel, Washington Capitals, the Boston Bruins.
Locked on and he scored! And we're live.
Hey everybody, we're back again for another great discussion video, and I am joined today by two very, very special guests. We have the great Pearlo Wisdom here, who I've done videos with before. His link to his channel will be down in the description as always. And making his first appearance on my channel, we have the great Joe Borek here from Sports Phanatic News. His channel will be linked in the description as well. We're going to be talking about Stanley Cup contenders for next season. Obviously, we've got, seems like not too long ago, we just finished up the 2020 Stanley Cup, but we're already looking ahead to 2021 here. And there are obviously a lot of teams that think they're going to be at least in contention for the Cup next year. So I want to thank both of you guys for joining me today. It's really great to have you all on.
Like I said, I wouldn't miss it for the world, man. I love working with you. It's fun. Good times, especially a topic like this. This is going to be good.
Yeah, doing early predictions for who's going to be contenders is always fun to do, because then you get to see if you're a very intelligent early predictor or get to slap yourself midway through next season. So.
Yeah, that's very, very true. So to get things started here, we might as well look at the defending Stanley Cup champions, the Tampa Bay Lightning. They've had a loaded roster for the last few years now. They finally put it all together last year and took home the Stanley Cup, and now they're obviously going to be looking to defend their title this coming season. Still got some major RFAs that they have to take care of, and not a very good salary cap situation. But no matter what happens with these RFAs, they still got to be in the conversation next year for Cup and have the potential to win again. So starting with let's start with Joe here. What do you think about Tampa and just that team and their chances next season?
Yeah, well, Pearlo knows how much I love when a team's built by the foundations of their goaltending, and then having, well, they have three, as long as they can, as you said, RFA, sign one of their RFAs, which is Sergachev, and three, bulldozing, like, big-name top defensemen, because McDonough started coming back last year. As we came back from the layoff, it started looking like the Ryan McDonough from old before. Mm-hmm. So if that can stay, they got two top dogs in Hedman and McDonough, and McDonough's not at a bad price, obviously, if that stays at 6.75. They just have to figure out a way to pay Sergachev is key. Cernak's a great defenseman, but if you have to lose Cernak to pay Sergachev, I think that's something you're willing to do and gain assets for trading an RFA. And letting someone sign him. It's not something you would want to do, but it's something you might have to do, because you have to sign Sergachev as far as I'm concerned. And then I think veteran-wise, obviously they put Johnson on waivers a while ago. Nobody ended up doing anything there. You might have to end up trading a guy like Killorn, since it seems like Johnson's not going to be able to get got anywhere, because nobody wants to get his $5 million tag, where Killorn's at 4.45, but kind of still gives a little bit extra to, like, Johnson at this point of his career. The Lightning still adore him, but he's more of like a third-line center at this point at the age of 30 that just really does well as a third-line center, not the flex player that the Lightning always talk him up to be still, I don't think, at least, where Killorn's still pretty good. Maybe somebody will take him for that, or if you eat $1 million, they'll definitely take him for 3.5, I would think. So that's the guy that you might have to get rid of, so you could give Sergachev at least a 1-year RFA deal to keep him in-house, and then you worry about all that other stuff and more about who you're going to be able to pay after next year, because they got a lot of UFAs. After next year, they got a couple people in Coleman, Paquette, and Goudreau that become UFAs. So it's going to be interesting, but they're definitely going to be competitive, and they just have that energy to them. Steve, aka Pearlo, and I always talk about energy combined with skill. When you have both, you're going to go places. And when you have a Vezina goalie that's just a beast back there, you're going to go places. And we'll see, because they didn't even need him to win the Cup. We'll see where Stamkos is at next year, because they used him as a moral support guy more than anything else this year. If he's able to come back in a capacity next year, that's another thing that makes their sky the limit still. But they definitely got to get Cirelli and Sergachev first and foremost locked up as RFA.
Yeah. Pearlo, any thoughts on Tampa Bay and that team heading into this coming year?
I don't like it. It's so hard to say, except for the fact that I agree with you that even if we go the worst case scenario and they lose Sergachev, let's say, for instance, somebody gives them a crazy big offer sheet and they're like, okay, we can't do that. They get the draft picks, and probably wouldn't hurt them too bad to have a couple more draft picks to stock the cupboards and stuff like that. They can still sign Chernak, who's only 23 years old, was kind of a late bloomer to begin with. His upside looks still very high. So it's not a big deal to have him up in the higher in the lineup, and if need be. And then of course there's Cal Foote. They've been priming in the minors now for a few years, and he's 21, and he's probably going to get a chance this year regardless, even if you do lose him. So you bring Cal Foote up, see what he can be. He's like a Braden Coburn type guy. That's what he's looking like he's going to be. And I agree with my bro B there. Ryan McDonagh, it's going to hinge a lot on if he can maintain his performance that he had in the playoffs. 31 years old. He's played a hard style of game his career. So he's getting to that point where it's looking like, this could be getting more towards the downside. So if they do lose Sergachev, they would have to restock the cupboards. But I think they have a lot of pieces that they could use to get more defense if they want to. That's the thing about Tampa Bay. They're so stacked on their forwards that eventually, halfway through the season at the trade deadline, they can add. I think they're every bit as much contenders, even if they lose. Even worst case scenario, they lose Sergachev. So, and of course, one of the biggest reasons why that is the case, and people kind of forget, and understandably so, because it's such a strong team. Andrei Vasilevsky may be the best goaltender in the league. Definitely top three. So, when a team has goaltending like that, it can make up for a lot of stuff you may lose in an off season.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree. When I look at Tampa, I mean, even if you take the RFA situations and just push that aside and you take those players out and you just look at this team, you still have Andrei Vasilevsky in goal. You still have Victor Hedman and Ryan McDonagh as two top-end defensemen. You still have Nikita Kucherov and Braden Point anchoring your forward group up front. Like, this team is absolutely loaded, even without Sergachev and Cirelli and Chernak and these guys that they still need to sign. You could take them away, all of them, and they're still absolutely stacked more than most teams in the NHL.
They still would make the playoffs.
They absolutely would still make the playoffs without a doubt. And then, if you have to move, like what Joe was saying about moving Killorn, I think very movable player there, someone who can play, up and down the lineup as a secondary scorer in a lot of different roles. And not under $5 million on the cap hit, so not a bad cap hit there for Killorn. I definitely think there would be takers on the trade market out there for a guy like that if you need, to open up some money. And this team, it seems like they're in such cap hell right now, but they're still going to be one of the best teams in the league no matter what happens. And they've just done such a tremendous job building that team into what it is.
Absolutely. Totally agree with you. Yeah, for sure. That Drouin for Sergachev trade. Oh,
my. Highway robbery at this point.
Yeah. They haven't made too many mistakes. Stevie Y built it, and Bruce Brisebois will start getting a lot of credit, I think, from what he learned from Stevie Y and just his own self. Has done extremely well at adding to what Steve Yzerman built. It's a model franchise right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And they brought in guys that don't cost a good amount that fit in very well to your locker room. Like you brought in the guys like the Colemans of the world, the Patrick Maroon, who you just signed for a good contract up for Quet. You got a Goudreau who's never going to make a boatload in the league that you might be able to keep around since he fit in so well and really seems to like it since going to Tampa there. So they make all those good small pickups combined with the bigger ones as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely going to be a top team again next year, and they will certainly be fighting hard to defend their title. Another team I want to talk about is who I think is probably going to be the best team in the Western Conference next year, maybe the best team in the league, and that's the Colorado Avalanche. Joe Sakic is unbelievable with the way that he's built this team and just the lineup that he's put together, the decor, the forwards, the scoring. Goaltending seems to be the biggest question there. Is Grubauer going to be a guy that can lead you deep into the playoffs or to a Stanley Cup? But overall, that Colorado lineup is just loaded. What do you guys think about Colorado headed in to this year?
I'm like I said, I can't. Like we were just talking about Stevie Y. Well, Joe Sakic is the Stevie Y of the West right now. He has built this team like I don't know what kind of voodoo magic he puts on these guys. Landeskog is I saying that like seriously, the guy's voodoo. Landeskog's up for a contract next year. I'm gonna probably when he gets this contract, I'm gonna be like, are you kidding me? That's it. Like Nathan McKinnon at 6'3" for the next 3 years. Like what the heck is that? Unbelievable. The guy should be making like 12 million, 10 for sure, 9 at the very least a year. And here he is, even Rantanen at 9.25 for the next 4 years is nothing for a 100-point winger, really.
Yeah.
Like everything he does is gold. Brandon Saad for Zadorov. Come on.
Yeah.
That's a very good deal. Yeah.
Kadri, picking up Kadri for Kerfoot.
Yep.
Kerfoot's a good little player, but come on, it's Nazem Kadri. Oh, I need a third-line center. Okay, how about I pick up the best third-line center in the league for a little guy that can do a lot of things, like a utility player. And what else did he give up? Like a draft pick or something? Whatever it was. He is just
one of the draft picks.
Yeah, Jonas Donskoy from San Jose. You could go down the whole list and think Valerie Nichushkin.
Yep.
He gave nothing up.
What a great year he had.
Unbelievable. And he's still got crazy upside. Right now, the way Nichushkin is playing, he'd be in, in the Oilers, for instance, team I follow, he'd be in the top 6 easy. And he's going to be a fourth liner for this team probably. The Duchesne trade where he got Gerard and all of that, and he sat on Duchesne forever and got exactly what he wanted. And then he pulls out, we'll talk, two second rounders for Devon Toews. Yep. Who, it's just every time, that is a top 4 defenseman. He just signed for 3 years for $4 million each a year. Look at teams' top 4 defensemen and see how many of them that have Devon Toews upside that are making that kind of money. He stole him. He was going to be an unrestricted free agent next year. So he bought out his unrestricted free agency at $4 million a year.
Yeah.
It is mind-blowing. The draft, he didn't go wrong on any drafting. They still got cap room coming out of their yin-yang. Considering the type of team they are, I guess, and I'll hand it over to Joe about this because he's the goaltending aficionado. But little concerned about Grubauer, Francouz. Not because I don't think that I was the one that picked Colorado in the West because I thought Francouz was going to be good enough. I thought he was going to be really good because in the regular season he looked fantastic. but he kind of fell off in the playoffs. So I'm going to pass it over to Joe. I mean, talking about Colorado, this is a cup contender all day long. They got so many things they can still add. If goaltending doesn't work out, all right, we got $78 million in cap space. We'll go get some goaltending. Like, unbelievable. But yeah, Joe, what do you think, bud?
I would say, again, this is a team, again, they build from their defense, goaltending, and then we knew they draft their offense. I mean, their drafting when it comes to offense is impeccably ridiculous. I mean, you have guys like Radden, you have guys like McKinnon, you have guys, obviously, like Landeskog, who's one of the best players in the league. When you watch interviews with that guy, he seems like one of the nicest dudes you ever run into ever. They added guys like Burakowski to their team, who I know Pearlo's very high on him and likes him as a player. So in Colorado, I mean, that's a great place to go to develop yourself even further. Their defense, too, is pretty economical. I mean, the guy that gets paid the most is Johnson, obviously, who still has the $6 million tag. But then there's Gerard at 5, Ian Cole at 4.25 for only this year left. Tays, of course, at the 4.1, as Pearlo said, and Graves at 3.1, and then McCarr making the 8.80 and some change until he becomes an RFA next year. They do that very economical. And Cal McCarr, like Pearlo said about Landeskog, he'll probably get some contract where you're like, wait, excuse me?
Yeah.
So like that'll probably happen after next year. So that's just the way that team tends to go. But yeah, I don't know. Goaltending's interesting for Colorado because the same is going into the playoffs because Grubauer had the experience to Francois doesn't. I don't know who they would peg as their starter to going into next year either because you got Francois on $2 million for 2 years. You got Gruby only next year. So are you going to try to immediately go to the guy that has the 2-year period and say, let's see if you can just ride it, so then we already know you're going to be the guy, and Grubauer will then become the backup and then just ride on into the sunset somewhere else after next year? Or do you want to go back to Grubauer after he actually had a pretty solid playoffs few minus a few games that then put in Francois? It's going to be a tough decision for them. Either way, they're going to next year, as we all know, is going to be a mighty condensed season. So both of them are going to be vitally important, and both of them are going to have good seasons for Colorado to go from being just a conference finals contender to a cup contender, because we all know that final round is the toughest of all rounds. Getting to the finals to the actual Stanley Cup finals from your conference finals is the toughest thing to do. And Colorado, they are going to need the goaltending to be the answer. I do think, though, Francois has a great chance to be a late bloomer coming over from Czech because he came over at 29. I mean, I don't think it would have been fair to expect a guy to play like a bat out of hell last year. I mean, he came over at 29. He's already a late bloomer at the age he came over, and he played much better above expectations than expected already. So he gave you what you wish, and then I think he's just going to keep building off of that at a very economical $2 million for 2 years. You figure as long as he puts up like above like a 905, 907 save percentage and good win totals and good amount of saves per shots, like he's going to be worth it at $2 million. But I think he's a better goalie than that. I think you're looking at at least good 1B in Francois, and if you have 2 very good 1Bs, that could probably win you something with the stacked team of Colorado. It's just both of them would have to come to be those 2 very good 1Bs because you're going to have to platoon guys until the playoffs next year so you don't have injuries.
Yeah, absolutely. Having 2 goaltenders is going to be crucial for next season with the condensed schedule and how jam-packed next year is going to be with the schedule going to be what it's going to be. For sure. The thing for Colorado to me that really stands out, and I think when you look at, when you compare teams and you look at a team like Colorado and then you look at a team like Toronto, both have the offense, both have great young players in their forward group, and both teams score a lot of goals. But then you compare the defenses, and it's not even close. They're on opposite ends of the spectrum defensively. And you look at Colorado's defense and what they've been able to build there. I mean, Makar is going to be, I think, at some point, the best defenseman in the NHL. You've got your veteran guy in Eric Johnson, who's been there for a long time now. And for what he brings to the table at this point, might be slightly overpaid, but he's an older guy to have in the room, and a guy with a lot of experience to come in and play on the middle pair and play a solid middle pair role. Ryan Graves had a breakout season last year, defensively, really shut down good defensive player who can add points as well. Girard's an absolute steal of an offensive defenseman at $5 million per year. And then, you round out this decor with a guy like Ian Cole, who's, been in the league for a long time. He's won with Pittsburgh. He's just like one of those gritty bottom pair, do whatever you need him to do type of defenseman. And you add Devon Taves to this group, and it's just absolutely ridiculous what they have on the back end.
Yeah. And you forget that they also have Connor Timmins, who played in the playoffs this year, and he looks already fantastic. And Bowen Byram coming up.
Yeah, Bowen Byram's
coming up.
Timmins and Byram, I mean, you're going to have 8 deep defensemen by the time those two come up.
Wow.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. So quickly here, I want to ask each of you, any contenders for next year that maybe aren't getting talked about so much? Like, obviously Colorado, everyone's talking about, is one of the best teams. Tampa Bay's the defending champs, but we'll start with Pearlo. Do you have a team that maybe isn't getting talked about as much as a contender next year, but you really think is a contending team?
I don't know if they're not getting talked about as much, but they probably aren't because they lost Markstrom. I think Vancouver is a contender next year. I believe in Demko. That's why. Mm-hmm. I really do believe Demko is going to be I'm going to be the first to admit I had my doubts. But what I saw in the playoffs and I saw at various times in the regular season, I see now why I had my doubts. It's just that his style was just developing into the North American game. And I think he found it. And now that he's found it, I think he's going to be better than Markstrom. And like right away. Holtby should help a lot in the sense that, he's won cups and all. And the other thing about Holtby, I believe he's from BC as well, right? So he's going to bring that pride into the Vancouver room and help Demko in that area as well, as just having pride of being a Vancouver Canuck. So I really like that. Now, and of course, the wonderful move of plucking Nate Schmidt from Vegas.
From Vegas, yes.
That really is one of the biggest reasons why I think that they are I put them in contender status now. Nate Schmidt's going to be enormous for this lineup with Tyler Myers, Jordy Ben, an underrated veteran who can play top four, and of course Quinn Hughes is still growing. I mean, he was just a beast last year. I can't see him being less of a beast next year. Alexander Edler quietly is one of the great defensemen of the last 10 years that people very seldom talk about, and he still plays fantastic defense. Behind that could be a little bit of a problem. Oliu Levy is still trying to come back from those injury issues that he had. Brogan Rafferty, it's going to be interesting to see what he's going to look like coming out of college. So, and Jalen Chatfield had some cups of coffee last year. Didn't look too bad. Hopefully he can grow out a lot. So the depth on D may be what prevents them, but the D themselves, and then the fantastic offense of Brock Besser and JT Miller and Tanner Pearson.
Pedersen.
Yeah, Pedersen. I mean, Pedersen, do you agree with me? I mean, I'm not saying he is him, but he's the first guy that stylistically wise anyways looks so much like Wayne Gretzky, the way he plays. He reminds me of Wayne Gretzky a lot. And I still think he has a lot. I think Pedersen could be one of those could get 120 points in one season. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it's next season, but I mean, he could get that. And some underrated guys like Adam Gaudette, who has been taking a while to put it together, but I think he'll play a regular. And Zach McEwen.
Yeah, I like him a lot.
I like him
Agreed.
an awful lot. They've got some really cool depth. They're talking about Jake Virtanen moving on, and that's because they've got a lot of depth in that forward group to be able to use him for a defenseman or something of that nature. I think they could. I'm gonna put them in contender status as early as next year. I just like Brock Bessers and Bo Horvat. He's merging as one of the great two-way centers in the league. Just fantastic lineup. So that would be my surprise, I suppose, or less talked about contender. I think more people would talk about Vegas after what Vegas did, and I still consider them a contender, but I would say that would be mine.
I like that pick that Pearlo had because they got a lot of mix. Vancouver's a fun team to follow too and watch because they got that mix of exactly what you said with the Gaudettes of the world, and they have a mix of good underdog players you like rooting for, and then those top dog players that you always just adore watching as a hockey fan, like the Pettersson and Besters of the world. But they do have this kid that, from watching NCAA hockey, Rathbone, that developed pretty well at Harvard. That's somebody that was a fourth-round pick in 2017. He's a shorter defenseman that's more of a guy that's probably going to be a third pair because of his size in the NHL as a fourth-rounder. But he just looked like he was very fundamentally sound at Harvard. Obviously, he's a really smart kid. He went to Harvard. So, and then he's a guy that I would look to just be one of those guys that becomes one of those sleeper, like, surprise draft picks down the line, because just from watching him, when you watch him play, he just seems like a very smart fundamentals, take it as they come player. It's just his size is going to limit him to be much in the NHL, but it'll probably be like a good, just go easy about it, fourth line or third line defenseman that's just a good guy to have on your team, and there's nothing wrong with that. So I think that's a good guy to look out for potentially there. But I agree, they're a very good sleeper team, and I agree also on Demko. It was just waiting for something to emerge with him, because last year I was at a game before everything went nuts, obviously, with my buddies in the 2019 part of the season, and it was when Markstrom was playing, I think, because it was early on in the season when Demko, everything you heard out of Vancouver was that Demko still needs to get better in his spots, like he needs to be more consistent in placement in the net and all that stuff. And then as the season went on, he did just that. So showing that growth, he's in his mid-20s now. I think Pearlo's spot on. Having him with a veteran like Holtby, that works out well. So that's definitely a good pick.
Yeah, I have to agree with you guys. I think Vancouver's definitely a team that could surprise next year. They were good in the playoffs this year. I think they went further than a lot of people expected. Obviously, they ended up losing to Vegas in a very hard-fought series, but I think they're a team that absolutely could make a run, and they certainly have the talent up front. There's no question about that. The goaltending, I mean, I think you're looking at Demko as a guy who they're hoping is the goaltender of the future and will be the guy for that team. But you have such a great insurance policy there now for the next couple of years with Braden Holtby, who, if Demko struggles, it's easy to put a guy like Holtby in and just say, you know, let's settle things down for a bit and you know, try and get back on track here with a guy who's won a Stanley Cup and has been one of the best goalies in the league for the past decade. So, losing Markstrom, I don't think is going to hurt them as much because they got Holtby and they have Demko emerging. And to me, the golden move for them was Nate Schmidt. That trade that was the golden move that took Vancouver from being a very good team in the Western Conference who could probably make second, third round of the playoffs, and adding Schmidt to that D-core when all you lost off of that D-core was Tanev, and Schmidt's an absolute upgrade over Chris Tanev.
Huge upgrade.
That takes them to being a contending team in the Western Conference, I think, and they're going to be a really, really fun team to watch next year, and a team that I think could really win a lot of games.
Yeah, a top pairing defenseman for a 5th-round pick, unbelievable.
Yeah. All right, so that
one.
oh, go ahead, Joe.
And a very affordable one too. That's all I was going to say.
Yeah, not a bad contract either.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that brings us to half an hour here. So
Wow.
it's already been half an hour somehow.
Crazy.
But we had some great discussions as always with both of you about our contending teams looking next year. We talked about Tampa defending their championship, Colorado, and Vancouver kind of as a lesser talked about contender. Really, thank you both for coming on today. Really, really appreciate it. And it was absolutely awesome as always.
Time just flies when I can't believe that was a half an hour. I was like, I got way to talk about, so we'll have to do this again.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's so yeah, absolutely. Anytime you want me to come back on, buddy, that's fantastic.
I definitely had a really good time doing these hot stove stuff. Was some of the most, like, whether it involves free agent signings or just projecting hot stove of who's going to compete next year, is the most fun stuff to do. So I definitely like to be on again because I got a team that I think is definitely characterized as a sleeper in most people's eyes. So we'll see what people think about that. Some people probably call me an idiot, but we'll see what happens when we do the next video. So.
Well, that'll be our next video then. That's going to be a lot of fun. Thank you guys again so much. Remember, everyone, both their channels will be linked in the description as always. We had a really fun time today. Hope all of you watching enjoyed it. And that's going to do it for this one, and hopefully see you at the next one.